Hello, everybody. It's Ed Rosenberg, and this morning I'm speaking to Clara from Simplyvat. Clara, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. How are you?
You did. Lovely to meet you, Ed. Yeah, I'm good. It's getting on in the afternoon here. It's English tea time, but good to speak to you guys. And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Okay,
And good luck with Black Friday tomorrow.
Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that. Now, we're going to talk about VAT. Now,
yes,
as you may know, I had a petition. Some people were very upset at me at Facebook, which is fine, in which I suggested, because HMRC was basically going to non-EU citizens who were selling in Europe, and they were basically saying that, okay, you had a 20% advantage, which you should have collected. So now you owe me 20% of all sales in the last 5 years. Now, almost 100% of the companies that I've spoken to, that's throughout the world, selling in the UK, when they get a bill like that, is going to go out of business. And no one is going to pay a foreign country back taxes owed at the expense of going out of business. No one's going to do that. So my suggestion was, this whole thing, the way it unfolded with Amazon and FBA, it's not going to repeat itself. It was a once in a lifetime situation. My suggestion was, all right, what happened. Pay some kind of fine or pay up 10, it could be 20% of what's owed, and stay in business. And everyone's happy because now the UK is going to be collecting so much money moving forward. Instead, what's going to happen is the UK is going to spend millions of pounds chasing sellers, chasing their tail, which they're not going to get. And these companies are going to be out of business, and it's like an eye for an eye and the whole world goes blind. So what's the point of doing that? Is that possible to be implemented?
I think never say never. I actually tracked down the right people to speak to at HMRC to see what was possible and what their thinking was and what the actual action plan is. Now, they have introduced a new task force called the Online Marketplace Compliance Team. So I spoke to the head of operations there, and he said, again, never say never with an amnesty, but at the moment it's not on the table at all. The reason being it's really politically sensitive because the uncompetitive advantage has driven some UK sellers out of business. They can't compete, with, such a big margin difference. So it's not on the table. But what he did tell me was they do not want businesses to go out of business. They do not want you guys to go bankrupt at all. They want you to continue to trade, but they need to be able to collect the back taxes for the UK tax authorities, for the UK government, but they're willing to do payment plans. So if you come with a reasonable payment plan, they will absolutely consider it. But also, I know we've had potential customers, and even some of our customers have had letters directly from the online compliance team and from Amazon saying they're going to shut down their shops, etc. Or the compliance team says you need to supply this data, otherwise you cannot continue to trade on Amazon or eBay, wherever. And they're asking for seller central login details of a seller. They're asking for company accounts, and they're asking for import documents, etc. So when you present your payment plan, they're going to have transparency, or they're going to think they've got transparency on how much you can afford. So the payment plan is going to have to reflect that. There's also like a sliding scale of penalties that can be applied. And it depends on the reason why the penalty has been incurred. For example, if they say it's something called lack of reasonable care, the penalty might actually be 0% up to about 30%. It really depends on the circumstances. But if it goes up to, say, what they consider to be an error, or deliberately concealed, which is basically fraud, then the penalty could be 100% of the tax owed, of the VAT owed. But if you go to them now, they're saying this is their amnesty, this is their version of an amnesty. If you go to them, then they will be lenient with the penalties and they will give you payment plans. And they do, you know, they want it to be a win-win for everybody, but they cannot write off the amount of tax. It's something like £1.5 billion a year that's been lost to the UK government. So there's a lot of hungry people now in the UK.
Yeah, and I mean, I would think it's possibly even more. The question is, do they want to be realistic or do they not want to be realistic? And from your experience, have you seen companies saying, "Oh, I owe $12 million, sure," and writing a check?
No. I think people are now, obviously, there's the tax authorities and Amazon have got proactive in approaching sellers. So the sellers are actually working out, you know, the liability and what they need, you know, what can they do about it? Like you say, it's kind of whether the business survives or not. And if they go bankrupt, then nobody gets any money. So I do think, you know, as long as the sellers decide to talk to people, then there is room for manoeuvre. But how much room is yet to be seen. This is all quite new. There's been a massive amount of lobbying in the UK by UK sellers for the British government. And we had, I don't know if you have it in the States, what's called a budget twice a year that the government talks about its financial policies. And they are saying they are making Amazon and eBay and everybody liable for the VAT if they do not do it themselves with the sellers. So that's causing the proactivity, if you like, from Amazon. But there's also, we've heard kind of on the street that Amazon isn't being 100% cooperative yet with the British government, so that, you know, it's kind of they're trying to get the right information out of them, and slowly they are giving them information on certain sellers' accounts, etc. So from HMRC's point of view, they're going to catch everybody eventually. Now's the time to put your hand up. But in terms of you know, people actually negotiating, they are looking at the payment plans, etc. Definitely, and there is that negotiations going on for the people that have owned up.
Yeah, because the way I see it is everyone now is on the same page now, and we're only arguing at this point on the past.
Yeah,
so, because Amazon is enforcing VAT. You know, there's no question about. Yeah. No, I'm saying they're asking you to put a number. Amazon is asking sellers to put a VAT number in the register.
Yeah.
So Amazon is enforcing it, and all sellers are aware that there's no way around it, and everyone's on the same page that from this point on, VAT is included in the sale. The only question is, should we go back and everybody lose, or should we move forward and everybody wins? I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, again, I think, you know, HMRC are caught between a rock and a hard place. They have to placate the sellers at home. There's also been talk by the European Union that they're going to fine the UK because the UK has been so lax about actually being proactive, finding non-compliant, non-EU sellers. And this has an impact on the EU countries' revenue because of the VAT distance selling rules, which I can, you know, touch upon a bit if you don't know about them. So they're really caught between the European Union wanting some money, their own government, and, you know, people here kind of getting fed up with people not paying taxes, etc. And, you know, the whole infrastructure, there isn't enough money to kind of, you know, look after the schools and the roads, etc. And then you guys that want to continue to trade and access, you know, a very buoyant, mature e-commerce market. So, you know, it's not a simple, you know, it would be great if it could all, the board could be wiped clean, but I think there's a lot of negotiation before that happens. And, they're under the cosh from the government to, be seen to be collecting the taxes in a responsible way.
Right.
So I haven't got easy answers for you.
Right. No, I mean, because basically, if I can deliver to HMRC 1,000 sellers with an unbelievable amount of money, even 20% of what's owed, just to allow them to continue selling, I can't imagine it makes more sense from the UK's perspective to say no, they'd rather get zero, and all these companies go out. Right? Okay, we're rehashing. I want to move a little forward.
Well, I'll just say quickly, Ed. Have you had discussions with them? Because I can have that conversation with them. But I don't. The chap I speak to isn't the decision maker, but he will have access to them, so it can definitely be presented if it hasn't been.
Right, and I don't know if they've seen my petition or not, and I have reached out, and so far no response. But I was just reaching out to general email boxes. So once we get off, if I can get some direct contacts, and if you could do the intro, that'll be amazing, and I appreciate that. Okay,
we'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Now let me ask you this: I've seen this situation. Sellers, they become VAT registered, but they never have intention of actually paying back the back money, but they want to keep selling forward because Amazon says that we need a VAT number.
Yeah.
Then some sellers are getting a follow-up email or notification saying that you're not in compliance with HMRC because you owe the back money. Right? Have you seen that?
Yeah. There has been some of that going on. Yeah.
Right. So a couple of things. Why exactly does so what incentive does a seller have to sign up if he has no intention of paying, or not that he has no intention, doesn't have the ability of paying the back taxes for the last 5 years?
Again, I think it has to be a commercial decision. I think what's happening in the past, sellers have said, okay, I'm actually going to VAT register now, but I'm not looking back, I'm looking forwards, and that's been fine. But what's been happening recently is when a seller does register, on occasion, I don't think it's every occasion, then HMRC are going to Amazon to get full transparency on the seller's history, and that's when it's becoming an issue. So a seller has to make a commercial decision at the point of registration, again, if they want to put their hands up and maybe get less penalties, or whether they want to look forward. I'm just really sorry I can't give you, I can't just make it disappear for you.
No, because when I suggested this idea, and again, and I'm not saying this is what we should do and I'm right, I'm just saying from my perspective. So a lot of UK sellers were understandably upset that they all said they want their money back from the last 5 years. So a lot of UK sellers, when I suggested this, who weren't compliant, UK citizens, were understandably upset that at even the suggestion. But that's what people do when you have difficult decisions. You make the best decision possible, and I'm hoping, through you and HMRC, we can get together and come up with some kind of win-win-win.
Yeah, obviously we're not going to sit here and pass judgment on anything. I understand your logic in trying to give everyone a future, and I think that's really important to make sure sellers don't go out of business. But again, I think the problem is that UK sellers have gone out of business, and it's materially impacted, them paying their bills for their families, etc. So it's an emotional issue apart from being a practical one. So why should somebody that's not UK based, continue to profit from, what is basically fraud? So it is a really emotive subject.
Right, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that happened already.
Yeah,
you're right, and I feel bad, and I don't know what can be done. Yeah. These things happen, but the IRS all the time makes settlements with companies.
Yeah. No, I heard about the sales tax amnesty. I think it's up for discussion because I think what's happened as well, as I said, the UK sellers have been lobbying the UK government, so that side of the story has been very very upfront. So now it's starting to impact you guys on the other side of the pond or wherever, and your guys' side of the story will now be told. So there will probably be a period of negotiation and information exchange, etc. Because it's all work in progress. If you think in 2006, just 2% of UK sales were online, and now it's like 15%. All this revenue wasn't even an issue 10 years ago. So there's definite opportunity there for increased income and increased taxes. And the whole VAT system hasn't really kept up to speed with this kind of e-commerce explosion. So I would suggest that you do lobby and you do get to be heard, because there is definitely two sides to the story. So there's no point everybody going down. Like you said, if things have happened before, it's about now leveling the playing field and everybody getting a future. But it's difficult. I have to be transparent. I need to sit on the fence on this one. The UK has lost income because of this, but then there's a massive future for everybody going forward.
Right. Well, interesting. Yeah, I understand. There's a lot of emotion here, and we had a similar. It was a little different with the sales tax, but we had a similar discussion. Because just quickly, if somebody buys something from New York, which I'm based at, I have to charge sales tax. But if you buy something from Canada, delivering to New York, then you don't have to pay sales tax.
Yeah.
So my neighbor buys something from me online, it's more expensive than if they buy it, and it's 8%, it's not 20%, but it's 8%. So these things, because the world shifted so fast with online selling, these things are going to happen. And for HMRC to just put their head down and say, it is what it is, what it is, without looking at the big picture, seems foolhardy for everyone. That's just my opinion. But I would like to ask you about practically, can a seller shut down his Amazon store and open a new account? Will HMRC still go after you?
I would imagine so, yes. There is that discussion out there. I know a lot with Chinese sellers, but unfortunately HMRC are cross-referencing directors' names and all the kind of identification, verification documents. So they will check things like IP addresses, directors' names. So it's a difficult tactic. There's no certainty. The thing is, you guys work so hard. All Amazon sellers, all online sellers work so hard. You build up your reputation. You get your Amazon reviews, etc., etc. And why build it on sand? Why not put proper foundations in and see what like you're doing, lobbying and seeing if you can negotiate your way out of this, and kind of put your hands up to stuff and seeing if the path of least resistance. Now it's okay, of course somebody could shut their account down and be opened up, but there's no guarantee you won't be found out, and nobody can guarantee that. And you're always looking over your shoulder then, aren't you? However hard you're trying. So I don't think it's the best tactic, but like you say, you don't know how much people owe, etc., etc. It just that burden might be too much to not try. I don't say really.
Right. HMRC is just the UK organization, right?
Yep.
So
it's Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs in the UK, which is the UK tax authority. Yeah.
Right. So every country in Europe has its own HMRC. Is that correct?
Yeah. They're called different things, but they're tax authorities, basically. Your IRS. Every country's got an IRS.
Right. Yeah. So why do I not hear anything from Germany's HMRC?
Well, Germany are actually starting to get really proactive. We've heard stories of Amazon accounts being shut down again because the German tax authority is finding out information. They are going to Amazon warehouses and trying to spot non-compliant sellers within the warehouses and stuff. When somebody wants to now register in Germany, because obviously the Amazon Pan EU, they're asking for the VAT numbers for all the relevant countries. When somebody goes for a German VAT registration, they have to supply all the information, all the backdated information. If they don't, the German tax authority is going to Amazon anyway and getting the information. So you cannot, at registration point, you cannot lie about when you should have registered there. So they're actually doing a lot of stuff at the point of entry and working off the back of, Amazon's remit to make sure that the VAT numbers are in the system before the Pan EU sellers can go forward.
Yeah, what I think the future is, and tell me if you agree, is in Washington or one state, they made some kind of law, and in order to be an online seller and deliver to Washington, Amazon itself takes the tax and sends it directly to the state. So let's say I sell something for $100 and the tax is 8%. Yeah. So I'll get the 100 and Amazon gets the 108, and then this discussion is over. Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Do you see something like that happening pretty soon?
There is that conversation with the tax authorities. There is talk about split payments, exactly that, and they're looking at maybe introducing that in a couple of years. There is that, definitely is the possibility. It's a world of data these days, and it's a world, the tax authorities can look in bank accounts, can look at sales channels, can look at, can be able to set up these kind of direct debits. So absolutely, it's on the table, and the tax authorities are looking for the path of least resistance with collecting what they think is owed to them.
Right, because in my discussion with sellers, from the way I see it, they're not necessarily looking. No one's looking to get away with it. Like if they would have set up that system from day one, that every sale in the UK, I get 80% and the government gets 20%. Problem solved. We would have had just as many people selling in the UK. It's because it was sort of like the old way of doing things with the new economy. Because it got all mixed and things happened so fast, the world changed overnight. We are in the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. And I think as well for especially for the American sellers, it's so different to your sales tax, the way it's set up, etc. So a lot of people didn't actually know about it. And a lot of UK sellers didn't know about it. I've got, one of our clients who wasn't a client when at the time it happened, but he came to me about 18 months ago, and he was a really seasoned businessman. Made his money in the 80s and 90s, starting selling on Amazon in 2007. Everything was going really well. He got 2 letters, one from the French tax authority and one from the Germans about 18 months ago. And because of the distance selling rules, he owed them €1 million each, and he'd been paying it in the UK. He went to the UK and said, "Can I have this money back? I need to pay it to France and Germany." And the UK said, "We'll only pay you back 4 years. We won't pay you back 7. And it spent a year of his away from his business trying to sort this negotiation out to make sure his business survived. So there's been a massive amount of ignorance around it for the last few years. And, again, people are working really hard thinking they've got a profitable business, and it's really a ticking time bomb. And for us, especially like at Simplyvat, we spend a lot of time trying to educate people. We know how hard you work. And we want to make sure that you've got sustainable businesses, to kind of grow with. And I think it's so exciting. I remember meeting a lady, I think she was in her late 60s at one of the Amazon seller conferences. And she said, can you believe it? I'm an international seller. And you go, you just sit and think about it and go, how is that possible? How quickly the world's changed and everything else. The opportunities it gives, it gives everybody is phenomenal. But with that, people thought the normal societal rules of taxation didn't apply somehow. So it's all a game of catch up at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, but I would say there's one other important factor here is the way Amazon and the way the marketplace is run. That if I sell an item for $85 and you're selling an item for $83, you're going to get 100% of the sales. But 20 years ago, if I was in a mall in New York and you're in a mall in New Jersey and you were 85 and I was 83, that's not gonna make a difference.
Yeah.
So the old taxation, so because it's exactly the same item and people are buying the item, it's exactly the same. Like even a restaurant, like let's say you would have one restaurant which would charge VAT and one restaurant which wouldn't charge VAT. Now, every restaurant's different. So I would go to, if I liked that other restaurant, I wouldn't say, well, I don't have to pay the VAT because you can't really compare. But here, it was impossible to do business if some people were charging and some people were not.
Yeah, I know.
And private label sellers happen to have less of an issue charging VAT because they control the price. So if you're charging 120, they're the only one that. Yeah. The problem was with the way I see it is it was beauty products and name brand beauty products. I think was the biggest issue because you can't sell it. Your whole margin was that, and if a few people are not selling it, people said they'll have no problem charging. But if a few people are charging and a few people are not charging, either you're in business or not, you're not in business. Those are the decisions you're making.
I know, and again, we always have that conversation. If I talk to people, just understand what you're getting into and make sure there's enough room in your margins to absorb the tax. Like you think in Europe, VAT ranges from 17% in Luxembourg to 27% in Hungary. You've got to have enough room in your margin and still be profitable. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point you doing what you're doing. Again, it's all about education, and people are working so hard and then having to charge VAT, and it's just wiped any competitive advantage out and wipe their business out. So planning, preparation is the key, definitely. And just find out, we always say you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And find out, spreading the word with, like what you're doing, making sure there's information out there to help people make informed decisions. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the situation you're in. And getting back to what you said a moment ago, I think people have the margin built in. It's just the way it's being enforced that it's and the dynamics of a marketplace where you're always going to buy from the same product, that this caused a situation. And I think the only way this is going to be resolved if we sort of all work this out and see everyone they see our perspective too.
Yeah,
and hopefully something that works out. So I'm gonna get that. If you could do the intro to the head of the HMRC, I'll appreciate it.
Okay, I'll talk to you about it afterwards. But definitely there can be a dialogue with them because, as I said, I think they've had a lot of pressure from this side of the pond, if you like. So you guys need to put forward your side of the story, and it has to be a win-win. There's no point. They'll lose a lot of revenue if all the non-EU sellers stop selling. That's a lot of money lost.
Right, it's not even the stop selling. It's all that bag taxes which the sellers want to give. Yeah.
That's what I mean, though. Yeah, but if they scupper you collecting the back taxes, they won't get any future revenue. So it's important that everybody has a future.
Yeah. Claire, anything else you want to say what sellers should think about in regards to that?
There is just one kind of poignant this time of year, because obviously it's quarter 4 and with Black Friday, again, it's all about the same thing. Just understand your VAT obligations. The EU VAT distance selling rules. So if you've got your stock in the UK and say you're selling on the Amazon European Fulfillment Network and you've got customers in France, Germany, Spain, etc., but the stock's going from the UK, there's a set of rules, set of thresholds that the tax authorities have set. So you would be charging UK VAT on any of those sales to other countries until you hit the set thresholds. It's 35,000 euros in most countries. Germany, it's 100,000. So once you hit the threshold, you have to VAT register in that country. So you might have a UK VAT registration, but now you say you've got 200,000 euros worth of sales in Germany, because of quarter 4, a lot of people, their sales, this is 60% of their, yearly revenue, if you like. So it can push people over the threshold, and it's a really important time to get compliant. And make sure you're ahead of the game with the tax authorities, make sure you've got a sustainable business. And with this in mind, we've actually just developed a new software. So we're offering a free service where we will, the software can pull data from multiple channels through API keys. So if people want to get in touch with me, we can have a look at sales data and see where you're exposed in other EU countries and get you compliant ahead of the game, or at least give you the information so you can make informed decisions about whether you want to keep selling in that market, whether you want, that responsibility.
Okay, Claire, thank you so much. That was extremely enjoyable and informative, and I appreciate you coming on, and we'll put your contact info in the notes of the video. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, lovely to talk to you. And as I said, happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.